The stars had always been quiet. For thousands of years, humans looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. They sent signals into the darkness. They built telescopes and satellites. They dreamed of meeting other beings from distant worlds, but the universe never answered back. Until it did. Admiral Ben Carter stood on the observation deck of the Horizon, Earth's largest orbital station. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years in the military, fighting wars he never believed in, following orders he sometimes questioned. But nothing in his long career had prepared him for this moment. Through the reinforced glass window, he could see them. 3 massive ships, each one larger than anything humans had ever built. They hung in space like mountains made of light and crystal. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Sir, they're requesting permission to send a delegation aboard," said Captain, his tactical officer. She was young, barely 35, with sharp eyes and a quick mind. Ben trusted her more than anyone else on the station. "Let them come," Ben said quietly. "It's not like we could stop them anyway." The alien delegation arrived in a small vessel that seemed to float rather than fly. When they stepped onto the horizon, Ben felt his heart beating fast. There were 3 of them. They were not like anything he had expected. The leader was a being made of crystal. Its body was transparent, and light moved inside it like flowing water. When it spoke, the words appeared directly in Ben's mind, translated into perfect English by some technology he could not understand. "I am," the crystal being said. "I speak for the Galactic Coalition. We have watched your species for many of your years. We come with a warning and an offer." Ben nodded slowly. "I'm Admiral Ben Carter. I represent the United Earth Defense Force. We're honored to meet you." His crystalline body flickered with colors. "There is no time for honor, Admiral. There is only time for survival. The swarm is coming." The other 2 aliens stepped forward. One was a tall, thin creature with skin like silver metal. The other was shorter, covered in soft brown fur, with 4 arms and kind eyes. They carried devices that projected images into the air. Ben watched as the images appeared before him. He saw planets burning. He saw cities falling. He saw creatures made of darkness and hunger moving through space like a living storm. Millions of them, billions. They consumed everything in their path. "The swarm has destroyed 17 civilizations," explained. "They do not negotiate. They do not stop. They consume all organic life and move on to the next world. Their trajectory brings them to your solar system in approximately 6 of your months." Step closer to the images, studying them with wide eyes. "How do we fight them?" The silver-skinned alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "You do not fight them. No one fights them. They are beyond fighting." "Then what do you propose?" Ben asked. Moved closer to him. "We can save some of your people. Our ships can carry approximately 2 million humans to safety. You would live among us, scattered across coalition worlds. Your species would survive in a way." Ben felt something cold settle in his stomach. 2 million out of 11 billion. "It is the best we can offer," said. "The logistics of evacuation are complex. Your people would need to be selected quickly. The young, the healthy, those with useful skills. The rest would remain behind." Turned to look at Ben. Her face was pale, but her eyes were burning with something that was not fear. It was anger. Ben looked at the images again. The burning worlds, the screaming people, the endless darkness of the swarm. He thought about Earth. He thought about the billions of people going about their lives, unaware that death was sailing toward them through the stars. He thought about his daughter, Amy, who lived in Colorado with her 2 children. He thought about his wife, who had died 3 years ago and was buried in a small cemetery overlooking the ocean. He thought about the soldiers under his command, the scientists on the station, the ordinary people on the planet below. 2 million, such a small number, such an impossible choice. What happened to the other civilizations? he asked. "The 17 that fell, did they fight?" The furry alien with 4 arms spoke for the first time. Its voice was soft and sad. "Some fought, some ran, some surrendered and begged for mercy. The result was always the same. The swarm does not care about courage or cowardice. It only hungers." "But did any of them try?" Ben pressed. "Did any of them really try to stop the swarm?" Colors shifted to something darker. Several advanced civilizations mounted organized resistance. They had weapons that could destroy stars. The collective had shields that could block any known energy. The Empire had warriors who had never known defeat in 10,000 years. All of them fell. The swarm adapts. The swarm learns. The swarm always wins. Ben was quiet for a long moment. Watched him, waiting. The aliens watched him too, their strange eyes filled with pity for the primitive humans who did not understand the size of the storm coming their way. Then Ben smiled. It was a small smile, tired but real. "I appreciate the offer," he said. "I really do. Your coalition has shown us kindness by coming here, by warning us, but we're going to have to decline the evacuation." Flickered with confusion. "You do not understand. There is no other option. The swarm will." "We've got this," Ben said simply. The 3 aliens stared at him. Even without understanding their expressions, Ben could see their disbelief. "Admiral," said slowly, "perhaps I was not clear. The swarm has never been defeated. Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are slow. Your species has barely left its own planet. You cannot hope to—" "Maybe," Ben interrupted, "maybe you're right. Maybe we'll all die. But we're not going to pick 2 million people and leave everyone else to be eaten. That's not who we are." Smiled for the first time since the aliens arrived. "He's right," she said. "We don't do that. We don't abandon our people." Was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke again. "Then your species will be the 18th to fall. We will record your bravery. We will remember your names." Ben shook his head. "You can do better than that. Stay, watch, see what humans do when we're cornered." He looked out the window at the stars. "You might be surprised." The aliens left that night, but their ships remained in orbit, watching, waiting. On Earth below, the news spread quickly. The governments of the world received Ben's report. Emergency meetings were called. Plans were made. Humanity had 6 months to prepare for the end of the world. And for the first time in history, every nation on Earth agreed on one thing. They were not going to run. Dr. Lisa had spent her entire life studying things that most people said were impossible. She was 52 years old, with messy brown hair and glasses that were always slightly crooked. Her office at the university was filled with papers, books, and coffee cups that she forgot to throw away. Her colleagues called her brilliant. Her students called her crazy. She preferred the second description. When the black helicopters landed on the university lawn and men in dark suits came to her door, she was not surprised. She had been expecting them. "Doctor," said the lead agent, a serious woman with a serious face, "your country needs you." Lisa grabbed her laptop and her favorite coffee mug. "Took you long enough," she said. They flew her to a secret facility hidden deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The place had been built during the old Cold War, designed to survive nuclear attacks. Now it had a new purpose. Now it was humanity's last hope. Inside the bunker, Lisa met the others. There were 47 of them in total. Scientists, engineers, mathematicians, and thinkers from every field and every country. They were the strangest, most unconventional minds on Earth. The ones who asked questions that made other people uncomfortable. The ones who saw solutions where others saw only problems. Commander was in charge of the operation. He was a Navy officer, tall and muscular, with a shaved head and a calm voice. He had fought in 3 wars and survived situations that should have killed him, but he knew that this challenge was different from anything he had ever faced. "Welcome to Project Last Light," said to the assembled scientists. "You've all been briefed on the situation. The swarm is coming. The aliens say we can't win. Our job is to prove them wrong. A young man in the back raised his hand. His name was Peter Grant, and he was only 24 years old. He was a mathematician who had solved problems that had confused experts for centuries. What resources do we have? Everything, said simply. Every government on Earth has agreed to give us whatever we need. Money, materials, manpower. If you need something, you'll get it. The only thing we don't have is time. Lisa studied the data on the swarm. The coalition had shared everything they knew, still hoping that humans would change their minds and accept evacuation. The information was detailed and terrifying. The swarm was not just an army. It was a single organism spread across billions of bodies. Every creature in the swarm shared one mind, one consciousness. They communicated through something called a quantum hive link, faster than light, impossible to jam or interrupt. When one part of the swarm learned something, every part learned it instantly. That's their strength, Lisa said during the first team meeting. The hive link, it makes them perfect. No confusion, no miscommunication, no delays. Every creature knows exactly what every other creature is doing. So how do we break it? Asked Maria Santos, a physicist from Brazil with expertise in quantum mechanics. Lisa smiled. That's the question, isn't it? They worked day and night. They ate when they remembered to eat. They slept when their bodies refused to stay awake any longer. The days blurred together into a fog of equations, experiments, and arguments. Meanwhile, above them, the world was transforming. General Sam was coordinating Earth's defense from a command center in Washington. He was an old soldier, 70 years old, with white hair and a back bent by decades of service. He had planned to retire next year. Now retirement seemed like a joke from another life. "We have 6 months," he said to the gathered military leaders from every nation. 6 months to build more ships, more weapons, more everything than we've built in the last 50 years. I won't lie to you. The math doesn't work, but I've never trusted math anyway. The factories of the world began to run without stopping. Day shifts and night shifts became meaningless. Workers slept in the buildings, waking only to continue their labor. In China, a new shipyard was built in 3 weeks. In Germany, weapons factories doubled their output, then tripled it. In India, millions of volunteers joined the production lines, building whatever was needed. The coalition observers watched from orbit, recording everything. Sent regular reports back to the coalition headquarters. His messages grew longer and more confused as the weeks passed. "The humans are not behaving as expected," he reported. "Instead of panic and chaos, they have unified. Their governments, which have fought each other for centuries, are now sharing resources freely. Their people are working together without complaint. They seem to believe they can actually win." On the ground, ordinary people prepared in their own ways. Amy Vance was a school teacher in Ohio. She had 30 students in her class, ages 10 to 12. When the news about the swarm became public, the parents came to take their children home, but the children wanted to help. "We can't fight," said Tommy, a small boy with big glasses, "but we can do something." So Amy and her students began organizing supplies for the local shelter. They collected food, water, medicine, and blankets. They made maps of the neighborhood showing safe routes. They visited elderly neighbors to make sure they had help. Nick Torres was a retired firefighter in Texas. He was 65 years old, with bad knees and a heart that wasn't as strong as it used to be. But when the emergency call went out for volunteers, he was the first one at the station. "What can we do?" asked his old partner, a man named. "Everything we've always done," Nick said. "We save people, we help people, and we don't give up." Back in the bunker, Lisa and her team made their breakthrough in the 4th month. "It's beautiful," Lisa whispered, staring at the equations on her screen. "The hive link uses quantum entanglement on a massive scale. Every creature is connected to every other creature through pairs of entangled particles. Disrupt the entanglement and you disrupt the link. Can we do that? Asked. In theory, yes. We can create a quantum cascade that will break the entanglement across the entire swarm. They'll lose their shared mind. They'll become billions of separate creatures instead of one unified organism. Maria looked worried. What happens then? Do they just shut down? Lisa shook her head. No, they'll still be alive, they'll still be dangerous, but they won't be able to coordinate, they won't be able to adapt, they might even attack each other in the confusion. How do we deliver this cascade? Asked. Peter Grant stepped forward with his own calculations. We need to get the device into the heart of the swarm. There's a central ship, bigger than the others. The coalition data shows it acts as a kind of hub for the hive link. If we can get our device inside that ship and detonate it there, the effect will spread to the entire swarm. Nodded slowly. So we need to punch through billions of swarm creatures, get to the center, and deliver a bomb that breaks their mind. Basically, yes, Lisa said. Smiled grimly. I've heard worse plans. The 5th month passed. The device was built. The ships were ready. The soldiers were trained. Earth stood on the edge of the greatest battle in its history. And in orbit continued to watch. He had seen 17 civilizations fall. He had seen empires crumble and great warriors die screaming. He knew what was coming. He knew the humans had no chance. But somewhere in his crystalline heart, something strange was happening. Something that felt almost like hope. He didn't understand it, he didn't trust it, but he couldn't deny it either. The crazy ones, he thought. Perhaps they are too crazy to know that they should already be dead. They came out of the darkness like a tide of nightmares. The swarm entered the solar system on a cold morning in February. Scientists on Earth had been tracking their approach for weeks, watching the distant sensors light up with activity. But nothing could have prepared them for what they saw when the swarm finally arrived. There were billions of them. Each creature was a ship, and each ship was a creature. They ranged in size from small fighters no bigger than a car to massive beasts larger than mountains. Their bodies were made of something that was neither metal nor flesh but something in between. They were dark, almost black, but with veins of sickly green light running through them. And they moved together as one, like a single living thing with a billion hands. Captain stood on the bridge of his ship, the Defiant Thunder. He was 38 years old, with red hair and freckles that made him look younger than he was. He had joined the Navy because his father and grandfather had been sailors. He had never expected to become a pilot of starships. He had never expected to lead humanity's first fleet into battle against an alien threat. All ships report status, he said into the communication system. One by one, the ships of the First Fleet responded. There were 200 of them, everything humanity had managed to build and launch in the past 6 months. They were smaller than the swarm creatures, slower and weaker, but they were all that stood between the swarm and Earth. You know the mission, said to his crew. We're not here to win, we're here to buy time. Every minute we hold them, the people on Earth get another minute to prepare. Every piece of data we collect helps the scientists understand how to hurt these things. We fight until we can't fight anymore. His first officer, a woman named Grace, looked at him with steady eyes. And then smiled slightly, and then we keep fighting anyway. The coalition fleet had retreated to a safe distance, far outside the battle zone, watched from his command ship, recording everything. His crew moved silently around him, their crystalline bodies flickering with colors of fear and sadness. The humans are deploying their fleet, reported one of his officers. 200 ships against the swarm. Suicide, said another. Said nothing, he simply watched. The First Fleet moved forward to meet the swarm. On its order, they fired their weapons, sending missiles and energy beams into the mass of alien creatures. Explosions lit up the darkness of space. Dozens of swarm creatures died. But for everyone that died, 1,000 more took its place. The battle was chaos. The human ships darted and weaved between the massive swarm creatures, firing whenever they could, dodging the beams of green light that shot from the aliens' bodies. The swarm was fast, much faster than the coalition data had suggested. They learned quickly, adapting to human tactics within minutes. Ship took a direct hit, alarms screamed, sparks flew from damaged consoles. "Damage report," he shouted. "Hull breach on deck 4, engines at 60%, weapons still online. Keep firing." Around him, human ships were dying. The swarm creatures would swarm over them, literally, covering them with their bodies and tearing them apart piece by piece. Watched as the Liberty's Pride, a ship he had known for years, was consumed in seconds. 63 crew members, gone in an instant. But they fought on. Grace grabbed his arm. "Captain, we've gathered enough data. We should fall back, regroup." "Not yet," said, "one more pass, one more minute." They dove into the heart of the swarm, firing everything they had. The data they collected was transmitted continuously back to Earth, where scientists studied the swarm's movements and weaknesses. Every second of observation could mean the difference between victory and defeat. The Defiant Thunder was hit again, and again. The ship was dying, systems failing one by one. More than half the crew was dead. The bridge was filled with smoke and the smell of burning electronics. "Captain," Grace said softly, "it's time." Looked at the endless darkness filled with alien monsters. He thought about his wife, waiting for him back on Earth. He thought about his 2 sons, who still believed their father was a hero. He hoped he had given them something to believe in. "Transmit all remaining data," he ordered. "Then set course directly for that big one, maximum speed." Grace understood. She didn't argue. She simply nodded and entered the commands. The Defiant Thunder, broken and burning, flew straight into the largest swarm creature in the area. The explosion was bright enough to be seen from Mars. Back on Earth, the people watched the battle through live feeds from orbital satellites. They saw the first fleet disappear, ship by ship, swallowed by the endless swarm. They saw the courage and the sacrifice, and they did not despair. Instead, they got ready. General Sam stood in the Global Command Center, watching the tactical displays. The swarm would reach Earth in approximately 18 hours. The quantum disruptor was loaded onto a stealth ship, ready to launch at the right moment. Ground defenses were in position. Every soldier who could hold a weapon was at their post. "They're through the first line," reported Colonel Kent, his deputy. "Estimated losses, 92% of the First Fleet." Sam closed his eyes for a moment. 92%, hundreds of ships, thousands of people, gone. "What did we learn?" he asked. Pulled up the data on her tablet. "Their central ship is larger than we thought, but the location is confirmed. The quantum link is strongest there. If we can get the disruptor inside, it should work." "Any weaknesses in their formation?" "A few. They don't like concentrated fire on single targets. Their smaller creatures are vulnerable when separated from the main group, and they seem to have trouble tracking objects that don't use conventional propulsion." Sam nodded. "Good. Get that information to all field commanders, and get me Admiral Carter." Ben Carter was aboard the Horizon, coordinating the second wave of defense. His face appeared on Sam's screen, tired but determined. "We saw what happened to the First Fleet," Ben said. "They died like heroes." "They bought us time," Sam replied. "That's all we can ask. How's the second wave looking?" "Ready as we'll ever be. We've got 300 ships this time, plus all the orbital platforms and the ground-based missiles. It won't be enough to stop them, but it should slow them down. That's all we need. Slow them down long enough for the disruptor team to do their job." Across the planet, people prepared for the end of the world. Some prayed. Some gathered with their families. Some sat alone, staring at the sky. But many others worked, building last-minute defenses, helping neighbors reach shelters, doing whatever small thing they could do to help. Amy Vance and her students were still organizing supplies when the first swarm creatures entered Earth's atmosphere. The sky turned dark with their shadows. The ground shook with the sound of their landing. "Everyone to the shelter," Amy said calmly, "just like we practiced." In Texas, Nick Torres and his team of volunteers were driving toward a collapsed building where people were trapped. The swarm creatures were landing all around them, massive alien monsters destroying everything they touched. "Nick, we have to turn back," shouted. Nick looked at the building ahead where he could see people waving from the broken windows. "Those people are counting on us," he said. "We don't turn back." They drove straight through the chaos, dodging falling debris and screaming crowds, and reached the building. They saved 17 people before a swarm creature destroyed their truck. Then they saved 20 more by leading them through the streets on foot. And in the bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Lisa watched the screens and waited. The disruptor was on its way to the swarm's central ship. Everything they had worked for came down to this moment. "Come on," she whispered. "Please work, please." The fate of humanity sailed through space on a single small ship, carrying a weapon that had never been tested, toward an enemy that had never been defeated. And the whole world held its breath. The weapon detonated in silence. Deep in the heart of the swarm, inside the massive central ship that served as the hub of the hive mind, the quantum disruptor released its energy. There was no explosion, no fire, no visible destruction. Instead, there was something far stranger. A wave of disruption spread outward at the speed of light, touching every creature in the swarm, breaking the invisible threads that connected them all. For a single moment, the swarm stopped. Billions of creatures spread across the solar system and covering the skis of Earth suddenly became still. Their movements froze. Their weapons stopped firing. Their advance halted. It was as if a puppet master had suddenly dropped all the strings. Then the screaming began. Not a physical sound, but something that and the coalition observers could feel even from their distant position. The swarm had been one mind for millions of years. It had never known loneliness. It had never known confusion. Now, suddenly, every creature was alone, completely, terribly alone. And they did not handle it well. The smaller swarm creatures began attacking each other. Without the guiding intelligence of the hive mind, they could not tell friend from enemy. They saw movement and they attacked. Ships collided. Creatures tore into their own kind. The perfect unity of the swarm became a storm of chaos and violence. In the Global Command Center, General Sam allowed himself a small smile. "It's working," he said. "The disruptor is working." But his smile faded quickly, because even in chaos the swarm was vast, and portions of it were already adapting. "Sir," Colonel Kent said, her voice tight, "we're seeing reorganization in the southern sectors. Some of the larger creatures seem to be establishing local control. They're not as coordinated as before, but they're still functional." Sam nodded grimly. "How many?" "Enough. Maybe 20% of the total swarm has recovered partial function. That's still billions of creatures." "Then we have work to do." On the ground, the war continued. Commander Price led the ground forces defending the eastern coast of South America. She was 45 years old, a career soldier who had fought in conflicts across 3 continents. She had scars on her arms and legs from battles that most people had already forgotten, but she had never fought anything like this. The swarm creatures on the ground were smaller than the ones in space, but they were fast and deadly. They moved like insects, with too many legs and too many teeth. Their skin was hard as armor. Their claws could cut through steel. "Fall back to position 2, shouted into her radio. "Concentrate fire on the big ones." Her soldiers obeyed, moving in organized retreat while laying down covering fire. The plasma rifles they carried could hurt the smaller creatures, but it took dozens of hits to bring down the larger ones. Ammunition was running low. People were dying. A young soldier named Tony took position beside her. He was 22, barely out of training. His face was pale and covered with sweat, but his hands were steady on his weapon. "Commander, there's too many of them," he said. Looked at the wave of creatures pouring toward them. He was right. There were too many, far too many. "Then we make them pay for every inch," she said. "Stay with me, soldier. We're not done yet." In Tokyo, Sergeant Chris held a bridge with 40 soldiers against thousands of swarm creatures. They had been fighting for 18 hours. 23 of his soldiers were dead. The survivors were exhausted, wounded, running out of ammunition. But they did not run. Chris was 31 years old, a farm boy from Kansas who had joined the army because he wanted to see the world. He had seen it now. He had seen things that would give him nightmares for the rest of his life, however long that might be. "Reload," he shouted. "Here comes another wave." The swarm creatures charged across the bridge, a mass of darkness and green light. Chris and his soldiers fired until their weapons overheated. Then they fixed bayonets and fought hand to hand. Then they picked up pieces of rubble and used those. They held the bridge. In the skies above, the battle was equally desperate. Admiral Ben Carter commanded the second wave from the horizon, watching the tactical displays with exhausted eyes. The coalition data was proving accurate. The swarm creatures that had partially recovered were weaker, slower, less coordinated. They could be hurt. They could be killed. But there were so many of them. "Admiral, we've lost the Luna defense line," reported Captain. "The swarm is pushing toward Earth's surface in the Pacific sector. Redirect the Pacific Fleet and launch the reserve fighters from Australia." "Sir, the reserve fighters were launched 2 hours ago. They're gone." Ben closed his eyes for a moment. So many gone. So many ships and people swallowed by the endless hunger of the swarm. But they were making progress. The swarm was dying slowly, one creature at a time. For every human ship destroyed, 3 swarm creatures were killed. For every city that fell, another was defended successfully. On the coalition observation ship, watched in stunned silence. His crystalline body flickered with colors that had no name, emotions that he had never felt before. "They're not winning," his aide said quietly. "They can't win, the mathematics." "Be silent," commanded. He watched a group of human soldiers charge a swarm creature 10 times their size. They were torn apart, but another group immediately took their place. He watched human ships throw themselves at swarm formations, sacrificing themselves to create openings for other ships to escape. He watched civilians throwing rocks at alien monsters, knowing they had no chance but fighting anyway. His aide pressed. "We should report to the coalition. The battle is lost. The humans." "The humans are still fighting," said. "The battle is not over until they stop, and I do not believe they will stop." He remembered something he had read in the humans' historical records. Something a human general had once said, thousands of years ago, during one of their primitive wars. They were surrounded on all sides, outnumbered, and their supplies were gone. Their reinforcements were destroyed. Every logical analysis said they should surrender. Instead, their leader had looked at his officers and said, "Good, now we can attack in any direction." The humans attacked in every direction. In Ayers, Price led a counterattack that drove the swarm back 3 miles. In Tokyo, Chris held his bridge for another 6 hours until reinforcements finally arrived. In Mumbai, in Cairo, in New York, in Sydney, humans fought with guns and bombs and knives and bare hands. They were not trying to win. They knew they could not win. They were trying to make the swarm bleed. They were trying to hurt it so badly that even if humanity fell, the swarm would never forget the cost. And slowly, impossibly, the bleeding began to matter. The swarm's local commanders, cut off from the hive mind, began to make mistakes. They attacked in wrong directions. They wasted resources on targets that didn't matter. They fought each other as often as they fought humans. "Sir," said, her voice rising with something that might have been hope, We're seeing significant reductions in swarm activity across all sectors. Their numbers are down by approximately 30%. Sam stared at the numbers. 30%. They had killed 30% of an alien invasion force that had destroyed 17 civilizations. It's not enough, he said quietly. No, agreed, but it's something. Sam looked at the tactical display. The central swarm ship was still intact, still out there in space, surrounded by billions of creatures. The quantum disruptor had damaged the hive mind, but it hadn't destroyed it. Given time, the swarm would heal. Given time, they would adapt. Given time, they would consume Earth just as they had consumed so many worlds before. How long before they recover full coordination? He asked. Checked her data. Best estimate 6 to 8 hours. Sam nodded slowly. Then we have 6 hours to finish this. He picked up his phone and made one final call. This is General. Authorization code Omega 77. Initiate operation last light. All units. Across the planet, in bunkers and submarines and hidden bases, people received the order. The final phase of humanity's plan was about to begin. And somewhere in the darkness of space, a young lieutenant named Kelly Shaw looked at her console and prepared to push the button that would save or destroy everything. Lieutenant Kelly Shaw sat in a small room deep underground, surrounded by screens and buttons and blinking lights. She was 23 years old. She had graduated from the academy just 2 years ago. She had never expected to be here in this moment, with the weight of the entire world on her shoulders. The room was cold and quiet. She was alone. That was intentional. The decision she was about to make was too big for committees or conversations. Someone had to push the button. Someone had to take responsibility. And somehow that someone was her. Her hand trembled as she entered the authorization codes. Each number felt like a heartbeat. Each keystroke brought her closer to the moment that would define everything. Operation Last Light, she said aloud, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. Initiated. Across the planet, things began to happen. In the depths of the ocean, nuclear submarines that had been hiding for months began to rise. Their missile bays opened, revealing weapons that had been modified and upgraded in secret. In mountain bunkers and desert silos, similar preparations were made. Orbital platforms that had appeared dead suddenly came to life. And in the space above Earth, hidden among debris and dead ships, a fleet of small stealth vessels began to move. They had been waiting for this moment, engines cold, systems silent, invisible to the swarm's damaged sensors. The plan was simple in concept, impossible in execution. Every weapon humanity had left would fire at the same time, at the same target, the central swarm ship, the hub of the hive mind, the heart of the enemy. Dr. Lisa had calculated the exact point of impact. Peter Grant had plotted the trajectories. Commander had coordinated the launch systems. Thousands of people had worked for months to make this moment possible. Now it all came down to Kelly Shaw pushing a button. She looked at her hand. She thought about her parents who lived in a small town in Oregon. She thought about her brother who was fighting somewhere in California. She thought about her grandmother who had survived 2 wars and always told Kelly that the world was worth fighting for. For all of you, she whispered. She pushed the button. The first missiles launched from the submarines, then the silos, then the orbital platforms, then the stealth ships. Within seconds, thousands of weapons were flying through space, all converging on a single point. The swarm saw them coming. The surviving creatures scrambled to intercept. Thousands of missiles were destroyed, but thousands more got through. And the stealth ships, moving in ways that the swarm could not predict, delivered their payloads directly into the target zone. The central swarm ship was massive, larger than most cities. Its shell was thick and strong, designed to survive anything the universe could throw at it. It had existed for millions of years, the beating heart of a species that had conquered the galaxy. It was not designed to survive what humans threw at it. The missiles hit in a perfect pattern, each explosion weakening the shell for the next one. The stealth ships dove into the openings, delivering bombs to the soft interior. Nuclear weapons detonated inside the creature's body, destroying the quantum nodes that connected it to the rest of the swarm. The explosion was visible from Mars. For a long moment, nothing moved. The swarm creatures hung frozen in space and on the ground, as if waiting for instructions that would never come. Then slowly, they began to fall. Creatures that had been fighting stopped fighting. Ships that had been flying stopped flying. The green light in their veins flickered and died. Without the central hub, without the hive mind, without the connection that had made them strong, they were nothing. Empty shells, dead things that had forgotten how to live. On Earth, people watched in stunned silence as the monsters that had been killing them simply stopped. Soldiers who had been ready to die found themselves standing in fields of alien corpses. Civilians who had been hiding in shelters emerged to find the sky clearing, the darkness lifting. General Sam stood in the command center, staring at his screens. The tactical displays showed green everywhere. Enemy activity was down to 0. The swarm was dead. "We did it," whispered beside him. "My God, we actually did it." Sam said nothing. He was thinking about all the people who had died to make this moment possible, and the First Fleet, the soldiers who had held the line on the ground, the scientists who had worked without sleep, the civilians who had never stopped hopping. He was thinking about Captain, who had died 3 hours ago defending a civilian transport. He was thinking about Commander Price, who had lost both legs but was still giving orders from a hospital bed. He was thinking about the millions of names he would never know, ordinary people who had done extraordinary things. "Yes," he finally said, "we did it, all of us." The Coalition fleet approached Earth slowly, cautiously. They had watched the battle from a safe distance, recording everything, expecting to document another extinction. Instead, they had witnessed something that had never happened before in the long history of the galaxy. They had witnessed the swarm die, descended to Earth's surface to meet the survivors. His crystal body was dim with exhaustion and something else, something that might have been awe. He found Admiral Ben Carter in a ruined command center, coordinating rescue efforts despite his own injuries. Ben looked up when the alien entered. He was covered in dust and blood, and he had not slept in 4 days. But his eyes were still sharp, still alive with the fire that had driven humanity through the impossible. "Ambassador," he said, "welcome to Earth, sorry about the mess." Stood before him, silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his words were broadcast to every surviving Coalition ship in the system. "In all my centuries of existence," said, "I have never seen what I have seen today. I have watched 17 civilizations fall to the swarm. I have recorded the last moments of empires that were ancient when your species was still learning to make fire. I thought I understood the universe. I thought I understood the limits of what was possible." He paused, his crystalline form flickering with colors that had no human name. "I was wrong, you should have died. Every calculation, every model, every precedent said that you should have died. But you refused. You refused to accept defeat. You refused to abandon each other. You fought with weapons and courage and something that I do not have a word for in my language. Something that makes no sense and accomplishes the impossible." Ben smiled tiredly. "We call it stubbornness." "Then stubbornness has defeated an enemy that has conquered the galaxy. The Coalition will need to update its records." Ben shook his head. "We didn't defeat them alone. Your Coalition gave us information that made the difference. You warned us when you could have just watched us die. That matters." Was silent again. Then he made a gesture that Ben did not understand but felt was significant. "The Coalition will be in contact," said. "There are matters to discuss, treaties, trade, exchange of knowledge. You have proven yourselves. You are no longer a primitive species to be protected, or you are equals." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Admiral, one more thing." "Yes." "When you told me that you would handle the swarm yourselves, I did not believe you. I thought you were speaking from ignorance and pride. I thought you were fools." Ben waited. "I was wrong about that too," said. "You were not ignorant. You simply knew something that we had forgotten. You knew that some things are worth dying for, and that knowledge made you stronger than any weapon." He left. Ben watched him go, then turned back to his work. There were still people to rescue, cities to rebuild, wounds to heal. The war was over, but the work was just beginning. In the weeks that followed, the world slowly began to recover. The scars would remain for generations. Millions of people had died. Cities had been destroyed. The landscape of Earth had been changed forever. But humanity had survived. More than survived. They had proven something to themselves and to the galaxy. The Galactic Coalition officially recognized Earth as a sovereign power with full membership rights. Ambassadors were exchanged. Technology was shared. Humanity began to reach out to the stars, no longer alone, no longer afraid. And in the Coalition's vast database, the entry on humanity was updated. The old description, which had called them primitive bipedal mammals with limited technological development, was replaced with something new. Under the species classification, there was now a single warning, translated into every language in the galaxy. Do not underestimate. When cornered, they become something else entirely. They do not accept defeat. They simply refuse it. And when they refuse something, the universe tends to listen. Across 1,000 worlds, other species read these words and wondered what else humans might be capable of. They would find out soon enough.